Before adding the remaining functionality, there is one problem with this dialog that needs to be addressed. If you've played around with the table from the last lesson for any amount of time, you may have already run into this issue. The problem is that some key presses are being passed up to Maya's main window. For example, if I have the dialog in focus and I press the A key, the viewport will focus all. Even worse, if I have an object in the scene selected and I press the delete key, again while this dialog is in focus, the object is deleted. Obviously this is a big issue, and it's something that needs to be addressed. When key presses are not consumed by a widget, they are passed up to the widget's parent. In this case, it's Maya's main window. In many cases, this behavior is desired, but not in this case. All key presses should be consumed when this dialog has focus. To do this, I will extend the key press event method and accept any stray key presses. This stops the key press event from being passed up to the parent widget. So back in my code, I'll jump up to where my events are, and I'm going to add key press event, and this also takes an event. As with show event, I'm going to call super first. This is going to be for key press event. And then I'm going to accept the key press. This is essentially telling Qt the key press has been handled and it should no longer be passed up to the next parent widget. By accepting the key presses, I'm no longer able to accidentally delete objects in my scene. So here I'm pressing delete and nothing's happening. Moving on, it's time to implement the code that will update the Maya scene when the values in the table are edited. The signal I'm going to connect to is called cellChanged. And for this, I will create a method called onCellChanged that has two parameters, row and column. It's the row and column that are sent by the signal, and they can be used to get the table widget item that was changed. So I'll first create this method, onCellChanged. And again, it takes a row and a column. And I'm just going to stub this for now. In my create connections, I'm now going to create the connection to this method. self.tablewidget.cellChanged connect, and this is being connected to my onCellChanged. However, there is a problem with setting it up this way. This signal is fired whenever the user changes the value of a cell, and also when that value is changed in code. Each time this table is refreshed and populated with new values, the signal is emitted for each cell, calling the onCellChanged method unnecessarily. I can demonstrate this by running the code, and you'll see in my output window that I'm printing out this onCellChanged multiple times. If I clear my history and refresh, again, you're going to see it's printed out. And this is happening once for each cell in my table. Another example is if the user changes the node name and uses an invalid name. Maya will come up with its own suitable name and force an extra unnecessary call to this slot. There is also the potential to lead to infinite loops if you are not careful. To handle this, the connection will be broken temporarily during times when the table should ignore cell change signals. The two places for this are in refresh table and onCellChanged. So I'm going to create a method that will allow me to toggle this connection. going to be called setCellChangedConnectionEnabled. And it's just going to take one parameter enabled. If it's enabled, it's going to connect the signal in the slot. Otherwise, it's going to disconnect them. And we haven't seen this yet, but all you have to do is change connect to disconnect. And you're going to use all of the same arguments. Back in Create Connections, I'm going to turn this on by default. And then I'm going to toggle it in the refresh table. So at the start of the method, I'm going to turn it off. And then at the end of the method, I'm going to turn it on. And I'm going to do the same for onCellChanged. But first, let's verify that this has solved the problem, and I'm not getting all of these onCellChanged messages when I refresh the table. So each time I click refresh, I'm not seeing anything printed out anymore. And this is a much better behavior. So I'm just going to do this for onCellChanged as well. So I'll turn it off at the start. And at the end, I turn it back on. All that's left now is to handle the different cell changes. First, if the user changes the node name, that is to say column 1 was changed, when this happens, Maya's rename command will need to be called. I will create a new method called rename, and it takes one parameter, which is the item that's been changed. The first thing I need to do is get the old and the new name. So I can get the old name by getting the stored value in the item. So get item value. And the new name is the text displayed in the item. So this is just going to be get item text. Now, as long as the two names aren't the same, I will call Maya's rename command. And this returns the actual name that Maya's named the object to. So my actual new name is going to be commands.rename. And then this is just my old name and my new name. And then if my actual new name doesn't equal the new name I passed in, I need to update the item's text. So I'm just going to do set item text. And I'm going to set this to the actual new name. I guess it would help if I spelt actual right. The last thing I need to do is store the actual new name in the data on my item. And this is self.setItemValue. Then I just pass in the item as well as the actual new name. Back up in the onCellChanged method. I'm first going to retrieve the item using the row and the column. And this is just the item method. I'll pass in row and column. And then if my column equals 1, so this is my name column, I'm just going to call the rename method and pass in the item. I can test this out to see if everything's working. I'll just bring up my outliner here. So I'm going to change pcone1 to mycone. and the value's been updated in the outliner as well as in my table. Likewise, if I put in an invalid name, so if I have a space, my cone, Maya will correct this, and again, my table is being updated.